Hi everyone, so it's Tiny Tom Logan back with another video for you, and today we're going to be taking a look at not one but two GTX 1660 Ti's. Now Asus always sends out Strix at launch and they're always the most expensive cards. They are their flagship cards. Strix is the daddy. It's also always much more expensive because there are two models below it. Normally you get the dual below it and then the turbo below that. But shock and horror, thanks to me kicking up enough fuss and even having to get Nvidia UK involved, I have managed to get the Phoenix. Now the Phoenix is the MSRP card, which means Nvidia set a manufacturer's suggested retail price for a reference design card, which is this. So the PCB is reference design. So the start of the pricing is $259.99, and this card meets that pricing. Then when the vendors make their overclock cards and the bigger PCBs and the bigger coolers, they are the cards when the pricing increases. So what it's going to give us a chance to do, which I never normally get to do at launch, is really see what the difference is between the MSRP, because we have no Founders Edition from Nvidia, it's an AIB only launch, and a flagship card like the Strix, which at the time of going to film the video, I still don't know a concrete price, but after having a word around with a couple of e-tailers, we think it's going to be $329.99. So there's a £70 difference there, which is obviously a fair amount when you're talking about a card that is or can be $259. But hopefully we'll be able to discuss it enough, and then I will just let you decide whether you want to go with the cheaper end card or whether you want to go with the full-blown Strix. The basic version of the card, if I bring up some comparisons, this is just to compare it with a basic 1060 from before, because there has been a lot of comparisons about it, and there was also a lot of rumours about the fact that it might just be a refreshed 1060. Well, as you can see in this graph, it is quite a bit different. It's still a Turing architecture card as well, it's just not got any of the AI RTX sort of side of things going on. But you get 10 SMs on a 1060 compared to 24 with a 1660 Ti. You get 1280 CUDAs on the 1660, and then that goes up to 1536. You get a bit of a boost increase as well, up to 1770, but you've obviously got a hell of a lot more cores running at that. And you also need to keep in mind as well that it's running GDDR6, not GDDR5 as well. So there's been increases across the board in the architecture. There is also some chat about something called adaptive shading, but this at the present moment in time is only actually implemented in Wolfenstein, which weirdly is a Vulkan based API game, but it is still in there. But until it's rolled out a little bit more, I don't think it's a bit snake oil until the developers enable it. But essentially what it can do is reduce the amount of shader pixel shading by up to 40%, which means the card is going to be working less hard on shading, which means you might get a performance boost but without reducing quality. Now the reason why I don't really want to start looking at this until we've got more games supporting it is I actually want to see whether the quality difference is the same for a decent performance boost. So with one game at launch, yeah, do you know what I mean? It's something to talk about, but it's more something that I would personally like to go back when there are more games that we can do a deep dive into it and get some decent performance numbers out of it as well. And also, Wolfenstein isn't in my current test suite, so it would mean having to test a few other cards for comparison as well to see if it can make ground on like a 2060, for example. Anyway, like I've said, the Phoenix comes in at $259, and the Strix we are hoping, rumours are, it will be $329. Now you do need to remember that's going to be retailer or e-tailer dependent, because they can set the prices themselves. So you may see it more in some places where they're trying to get 20 or 30 quid extra off of you at launch because of the panic buying to see whether the cards go really quickly. But anyway, the size difference between the two cards is quite stark. Now, the Strix is always a big card anyway. For argument's sake, some of the 20 versions, actually like the 70 and the 80, actually shared the same PCB with the 2080 Ti. Now, this hasn't quite got that extra girth, but it looks a lot more expensive than it is. When you do mix in the Phoenix into the mix and put them side by side, though, it's pretty clear quite how much bigger the Strix is. One of the things I would say, though, for the Phoenix, straight away, though, is yes, it is smaller. So it's going to struggle a little bit more with cooling, but because it's smaller, it's going to instantly suit a lot of the people looking for an ITX or a smaller system, and you're not going to be getting penalised for the ITX or compact sizing. Because with a lot of the cards, when they make a smaller version, it's still quite expensive, whereas this is actually down at the MSRP end of the spectrum, so it's actually going to not end up raping your wallet for the privilege of it being smaller. We will talk about performance in a minute, but if you're interested, you can go and open another tab and go to the Overclock 3D website to have a look at them anyway. They both got two 8-pins. I am going to strip both of them for you as well, just so that you are fully aware. So you can see underneath the hood of both of them. Now, the Strix has got a back plate and the Phoenix doesn't. But when you also get round to the back of the card, the Phoenix has got a DVI port, 2 HDMIs and a display port, whereas the Strix has got 3 display ports and 1 HDMI and no DVI. So there's the smaller Phoenix is more suited for people with maybe slightly older monitors or setups. Obviously, massive difference with fan sizes. It's both wider, longer, taller. It's just bigger in every possible way. But then again, the price is bigger in every possible way as well. So aesthetically, you can see there that there's a fair bit of difference. But what we're going to do now is we're going to break off and we're going to go into some lovely B-roll of me stripping the pair of the cards so you can actually see the PCBs as well. Okay, so we're fully broke down now. There is the back of the cooler, the heatsink area. You can see it's meaty. Then again, they have been for a while. This is the cooling plate. You can see this end touches the VRMs. A couple of contact points for the memory. There's another memory contact point here, but obviously there aren't the memory chips there. So that would have been there like that. And then the actual card itself, you can see the PWM headers up here. Then you've got your RGB header there. These are the headers for the wires. But there is a header down here, which has obviously not been soldered on, but there is a connection there for something else. Anyway, so don't forget, you can pause at any moment. I will get closer again in a moment. But there we go, peeps. Fully stripped down, uber naked. But now, so I'm not going to speed up the footage of me taking the Ventus apart because it's just 4 screws and then that's it. So plop it off. I'm just trying to get the pads off, but they look like they're more like plasticine than anything else. Anyway, so I'll pop a picture up because I took the other side of this cooler off before. It's got a copper core and it just looks and feels a bit like the old standard Intel coolers. Anyway, it's quite a basic design, but that's how you keep the price down. And then it's the reference PCB as well. So get you in nice and close for a look. Don't forget you can pause at any time. There's not really a great deal of commentary that you can really do on it, but I do like the clarity of this new 4K camera. There's 2 memory chips underneath there, 4 memory chips underneath there. Obviously, that's 6 in total. Does make you wonder though, doesn't it, with the ones that are missing. Anyway, so there is your... Now, performance-wise, with the pair of the cards. One thing I do need to stress is the Asus card literally turned up the day before the NDA for the review. Now, there was not enough time for me to be able to get everything done in that time. So we've done the full set of stock results. We did some basic overclock results as well, which you can go and see on the OC3D website if you would like to click through now. There's lots more games through there as well. And you can also, it might be easier for you to be able to see the graphs. In the graphs, you can see the Strix both in stock and overclocked. Now, I'm not leaving the Phoenix out. It did all right, but it didn't actually overclock as well. As I'll ping up some stuff just so you can have a look quickly. And that's just so that you can get a feel for it. We will complete the overclock testing, and I do have another MSRP card to do next week. And you'll see the Phoenix OC results in that. I just can't get them done in time for the full review. Now with the clock speeds, this graph, when you bring it up, you can see that we've done the OC scanner results in this. Now with the OC scanner, it's actually nice that they've implemented that now in the Asus overclock software. But we did, like I said, we did a very basic, quick, like manual overclock for it, and it ended up with plus 175, which it did relatively well, but it didn't actually manage to keep up performance wise with the Strix. Now we will go back and do all the games like I said, but I wanted to kind of roll that through for you. You can see that the Strix at stock, overclock scanner and manual overclock, they're all considerably above everything that came in with the Phoenix. But with an MSRP card, without an overclock and all that sort of stuff, it's not necessarily a shocker here that for a card that's 70 quid more, it's done better. Now, don't forget, we are reviewing both cards here, and essentially what I am trying to do is just give you the information so you can decide what's best for you. When it comes to the 3D Mark Firestrike Ultimate, obviously this is the Ultimate one, it's actually the 4K one. It's even a big ask to do this, but when you look at the graph, it's one of the things that I would say is just look for the 1060 at the bottom and kind of base your thoughts around how it's performed compared to that. And I'm kind of pausing because I know how much B-roll I need to do for the Strix and for the Phoenix and everything that I've got to do. Then we go on to temperature testing. Temperature testing, this is really the one where the Phoenix falls down over the Strix, or the Strix leaps ahead over the Phoenix, whichever way you want to kind of think about it. When you think about the size of the cooler difference, it's not, but you wouldn't need to be Einstein to have worked out why. When at stock, you were looking at 57 for the Strix, and even with a manual overclock, it was topping out at 60. And then it was 79 for the Phoenix. Now, there was always a 80-degree thermal limit with the NVIDIA cards anyway, and what would happen is they would let them get to 80 degrees and then the fans would just kind of spin up to keep them there. And with the Phoenix it did quite well in that, because yes, it got to 79 degrees, but at no point was it intrusive. It's not the quietest card to keep it there at those kind of levels, but if you had your cans on or you had music, game music on, that kind of sense, you probably will never hear it. If you're a silent gamer or you're trying to game in the same room as someone sleeping, or I don't know, reading in the front room, for example, then you probably will pick up the extra fan noise at that point. But I think for those people where noise is going to be so critical, they would probably be investing in something that's not a lower tier card anyway. When we move on up, we can look at some game results. And with Far Cry 5, it's fairly easy to see the Phoenix down near the bottom, and the ROG's a good couple of notches above, and you can actually see where the Strix 1660 Ti in this sense is actually above a 1070 Founders Edition in Far Cry 5 at least. Go up a little bit further and you'll see the manual overclock as well. The manual overclock actually ended up adding 6 frames per second at 1080p at this level, and then when we go from 4K it went from 35 to 38. That's actually a healthy amount of FPS for just a manual overclock. One thing I will say as well is the footage that you are seeing in the background was actually taken from the cards themselves. It's the genuine footage from them. We did it with an Elgato 4K 60 Stream Deck, so it's not just some generic B-roll, it's actually the difference in the two cards. It's also why I'm talking a little bit more, so that you can see the difference between the two cards, and you've got all the overlays and everything to guide you as well. F1 2018, there was a fair old difference between the two cards at this point. It was 4 FPS at stock, and then 7 FPS with an overclock at 1080p. But the frames per second are quite high at this point anyway, so having a card like the Phoenix doing 89 frames per second at 1080p, and I do need to reiterate as well, the games were all run completely maxed. So all the AA and all the possible things that we can turn on, the only change that we made between them was the resolution settings, because obviously we run 1080, 1440 and 4K for this. Now I wouldn't say that it was a 4K card, but the fact that it's actually doing any kind of half decent numbers in the graphics at all should really say a lot. Same with DSX, quite a strenuous game DSX, but again the Phoenix was just a little bit below. You can see it's only a tiny little bit below the MSI 1660 Ti Gaming X, but then when you kind of yomp the Asus into the Strix into the mix, you can see there's a fair big difference above. And yes, I am keeping talking so that I can show you the Phoenix gameplay, but also I can show you the Strix gameplay as well. Now, if things go to plan and the rumour mill is true, the £70 difference between the card at this price point, I would say is a fairly big one. But I would say with these two cards that it's going to be horses for courses. In that, if you're on an extremely tight budget, which you could be anyway, looking for an upgrade from an older GPU, maybe like a 960 for example, then the Phoenix is going to serve you very well. It is going to get a little bit warmer. Maybe in the coming months, maybe you can get yourself an aftermarket air cooler for it, or you could buy like one of those AIO add-ons. But the problem with an AIO is they're never going to be cheap either. So if you wanted to get the temperatures down, there would be aftermarket options that you could explore. And as long as there's air blowing down on the card to keep the rest of the components cool, you're probably going to do relatively well as well. If you can find one where you can actually squeeze on a couple of 120mm fans and some decent big heat sinks and stuff on it. But again, the problem with when I'm saying about upgrading them to make them quieter is you're probably going to pay 50, maybe even £80 for an aftermarket cooler, when that one kind of is like that sort of money anyway. It's bigger, performs better out the box, you get all the lighting and stuff. So it could be, you know, that you buy this one because if you were going to do it and then you were going to add it on, it's because you can kind of spread the payment, so to speak. So you buy this and then you can buy something else for it, then you can buy something else for it, or you just buy this because it's just performance per pound. Because for the actual performance that you get out of this, for the amount of money that you make, it's hard to argue at £259, to be fair. Just comparing it to the old 1060, it's a fair leap forward. And it's only really the temperatures that bother me. And you will see in the not too distant future that it still overclocks relatively well, but you know, it is going to start making a little bit more noise. But with the Strix, it looks way more expensive than it should. The lights and everything that are all on it, they all look nice. It's a bit of a shame that they are not addressable yet, and it's still the old Strix design that they've been kind of regurgitating for a little while, other than the fans. And that's something I think that Asus need to address as well, is the fact that the Strix design now needs updating. So we kind of need a Strix V2, or them to get rid of the Strix name and bring something else in. So there's a bit of a leap forward so that they can kind of stay in front, because at the moment I think it's getting a bit stagnated. Yes, it's great for branding because everyone knows it's a Strix, but when you're someone like me and it's the same card pretty much over and over again, it's kind of getting to the point now where, yeah, all right, they're saving money on manufacturing design and all that sort of stuff, but it's also starting to feel a bit lazy and a bit regurgitated, and it kind of needs a bit of a, you know, push in the right direction again. And I'd like to think that they've got something in the cauldron of goodness, but we kind of need to start seeing it now, please. So it looks a lot more expensive than it is. It's obviously a massive cooler. You get the back plate, you get the lighting, the temps are there, and the performance puts it in front consistently out of the box. And one of the things I will say is with the Strix, it's got a little Q switch on the top and a P switch. That is actually the difference between quiet and performance. And it was consistently in front of the Phoenix, even in quiet mode. And the other thing is, in the GPU tweak software, there's literally just an OC button where it'll apply a profile, which will just put a manual overclock on for you, which you can do really, really easy. But you also get the OC scanner as well. Now that's all based on temperatures and all that sort of thing as well. So the Strix was pretty much in front on all of them. So with the two cards, normally there is going to be so much hate for the Strix in that there's a massive amount of price difference. And with something like the 2080 Ti, for example, it was completely warranted as well, because it was like £350 more expensive than the Founders Edition. Now, when you do get down to a card that could be, you know, you can get a 259 version of a card, going up to 329 in percentage terms is a fair whack on top. But when you actually put the two side by side and you can get a kind of feel for it, it does start to feel like, I'm not saying that it's a bargain, not saying that at all, but it's less of a shock than the difference between the 2080 Ti Founders and the 2080 Ti Strix, which was £350 difference. So with this one, it feels, to me at least, it feels a little bit less of a kick in the nuts. Because for 80 quid, do you know what I mean, it is all big brass. But the best bit about being able to do this is, yes, it does. Kind of, you can see that, at least with this card, the Strix isn't that much more expensive. But what we've also been able to do, which is critical, is rather than you having to guess whether this one is going to be all right, for those of you out there that might not want to have a side panel window or might not even care, someone that's literally just buying a card, and rather than paying for it with a credit card or something like that, it's just going to come out of a month's wages, you can actually for once see what one of these cards at MSRP can just do. And for 259 quid, I think it's kind of hard to argue with, especially when you consider that the 1060 Strix at launch was 279. So yes, it's only £20 more expensive. Sorry, it's only £20 cheaper, but it's a bit cheaper than the 1060 was at launch, and it's a fair bit quicker as well. So hopefully being able to show you either end of the spectrum is going to give you all the ability to decide where you want to kind of place your money. Do you want to keep it at the tight end of the budget spec and go for this? Or do you want to spend a little bit more and go for that? It's going to be completely up to you. But at least you've got that information now, and it's very rare that I ever get the chance to do the pair. And I've actually really enjoyed it, and I hope the balance is going to be able to make you decide as well. Confusing thing is there's actually the turbo in between as well, which they reckon is going to be $299. That's still twin fanned as well. And it does come in cheaper than the MSI Gaming X. And if rumours, again, are meant to be believed, a bit quicker. Anyway, so I have done my piece for you. I would love you to let me know underneath. Don't forget you can click through to the OC3D website as well if you want to see more games and all that sort of stuff. Subscribe if you liked the video. I am trying hard now to do all the extra overlays and give you lots more information. But if you think there's something I've missed, other than talking too much, because I can't really help that, you can leave me some constructive criticism in the comments, because it's all taken on board. But for now, at least, this is the tiniest one, starting to lose his voice because he's spoken too much. Out. Ding. Oh, wrong hand. Ding. Ding, ding. Oh, yeah, just go, Tom.